Greetings, my late night listeners, and welcome back to Night Sessions. We're continuing our exploration deeper into the folklore of West Virginia. Where nearly a decade before the famed Mothman sightings of Point Pleasant, there was a strange and mysterious occurrence that has yet to be explained. So I'd like to personally welcome you to Flatwoods, home of their very own green monster. We're traveling back in time to 1952. Here in Flatwoods, it's a small community where everyone knows everyone. The topic of the Flatwoods Monster is still brought up in conversation today. If you ever find yourself in this part of the country, you'll notice, with its rolling hills of dense forest and abundance of winding back roads and sparse population, it's the perfect setting for yet another mysterious happening. To give you an idea of what this creature looks like, as described by witnesses, it is said to be around 10 feet tall, with eyes that glow orange inside a red, round head, with some sort of pointed hood or helmet around it, along with what appeared to be a metallic dress-like garment. The existence of arms on the creature is uncertain. Some say it had no arms, and some say it had small toy-like arms. It hovers just above the ground and makes a hissing sound as it glides through the air. It is often accompanied by bright lights and a burning, metallic smell. Some have also experienced a sickening mist near the area, and later are said to have suffered various symptoms from being exposed to it. Now that you know what this creature looks like, you'll know what to expect when meeting the Flatwoods Monster. Welcome back to the future. For our first encounter, I'll be reading from the book Monsters of West Virginia, Mysterious Creatures in the Mountain State by Rosemary Ellen Gilly. On the night of September 12, 1952, a wave of UFO sightings occurred over a large portion of the eastern United States, including Pennsylvania, West Virginia, Virginia, Ohio, Tennessee, Maryland, and Washington, D.C. Blazing objects were seen hurtling through the skies, and many witnesses thought they were airplanes crashing in flames. In Flatwoods, a group of 10 boys were playing in a schoolyard enjoying the summer evening. They ranged in age from 10 years to 14. The ages of 3 of them at the time are not known. They saw one of the fireballs soar overhead with flames trailing behind it, before it came down at a nearby farm owned at the time by a man named Bailey Fisher. The boys ran to investigate. They passed by the home of 2 boys who were brothers, Edison May and Freddie May. Their excitement about a landed flying saucer caused their mother, Kathleen May, to join the hunt, as well as 18-year-old Eugene Lemon, who brought his dog. 5 of the boys decided to go home. The other 5, plus the 2 adults, went on to the crash site. By then, it was about 7:40 p.m. and getting dark, so they took flashlights. They found an object crashed into the earth and sticking out. It appeared to be pulsing in brightness. A strange sound like whining or hissing filled the air. There was a violet hue to the air. After their arrival, a mysterious fog-like mist began to blanket the area. It had a nauseating metallic smell and irritated their throats and lungs. The dog became agitated, began barking violently, and took off. It was later found back in town, where it had vomited on a house veranda and died soon thereafter. Back at the crash site, the boys and adults had yet to realize that the object had actually landed twice, first on the hilltop and then in the valley, and that something living had emerged from it. When they saw it, they at first thought it was an animal perched in a nearby tree looking at them. Kathleen May shined her flashlight at it, and the entire group got a horrible shock. Instead of an animal, they saw a 12-foot-tall figure with glowing eyes standing next to the tree. As soon as the flashlight beam hit it, the eyes shot out brilliant beams of light that illuminated the entire fog-filled area. The creature seemed to be more of a machine, a metallic casing or suit, or perhaps a creature inside a suit. It was dark in color, but seemed green to some of the witnesses, perhaps because of the metallic-like surface reflected the green off the surrounding trees and bushes. It also glowed with light. The middle torso seemed like a cylinder, and the lower torso fanned out like a metallic apron of sorts. Where one might expect arms, there were only two short antenna-like things sticking straight out. Its head was round and surrounded by a stiff cowl or helmet shaped like an ace of spades. The round eyes looked like portholes. It had no feet, but levitated about a foot off the ground and maneuvered around in this manner. The creature glided close to Kathleen May, who felt a warm mist around it. Without warning, it squirted an oily substance all over her clothes. There seemed to be no immediate ill effect from the oil, but the nauseating mist continued to burn their throats. The creature left a trail of oil on the ground as it glided. Suddenly, the horror of it hit the witnesses, and all of them, adults and boys, fled back to town as fast as they could run. At the May home, chaos erupted. All had trouble breathing, and the boys were bruised and bleeding, probably from their pell-mell flight. Lemon vomited all night long. Kathleen's eyes were red and teary. Edison and Freddie required medical treatment for their damaged mouth and throats. Around 8:15 p.m., Kathleen telephoned the sheriff's office to report their experience, and the sheriff in turn notified the state police. A state trooper telephoned the co-owner, publisher, and photojournalist for the Braxton Democrat, A. Lee Stewart. Stewart jumped to join the investigation. He went to the May house and gathered a group of armed men, among them Eugene and Joe Lemon, and went out to the scene, but the monster was gone. Some of its sickening odor lingered behind. Sheriff Robert Carr, meanwhile, took two of his dogs to the area, but the dogs ran off howling into the fog. He gave up until morning. He found his clothes had been stained by some sort of oil. The military was quick to become involved. The West Virginia National Guard was mobilized by the U.S. Air Force and sent to Flatwoods, and also to Frametown about 19 miles away, where another fireball in the sky had been seen coming down. About 30 troops under the command of Captain Dale Levitt descended on the Flatwoods site about 1:30 a.m. They were soon joined by more troops, with the assignment to look for a downed airplane. They found nothing, even though some of them stayed all night. A few troops searched the area again in daylight. Stewart also returned to the scene in early daylight and examined some 30-foot-long skid marks left in the grass. While he was studying the marks, his clothes were stained again by the mysterious oil. He found a small, odd piece of silvery metal that looked like dripped solder. He was the first person to break the story in the press. The West Virginia media reported the UFO lights as meteor-like objects streaking across the sky, seen by numerous witnesses throughout a wide area. The story of the monster and how the first witness became faint and ill by something that looked like Frankenstein spread rapidly. By afternoon, Flatwoods was swarming with people looking for evidence and souvenirs. They picked up more bits of metal and pieces of a black, plastic-like substance and found more traces of oil. The monster sightings were by no means over. A young couple and their 18-month-old son encountered the creature near Frametown on September 13th, terrifying them so badly that they didn't speak about it for years. George and Edith Stentowski of Queens, New York, had traveled by car to Cincinnati, Ohio, to visit a relative. They were on their return trip, leisurely taking the secondary roads. Around 8 p.m., they entered Braxton County and traveled along what is now State Route 4. Between Gasaway and Frametown, their car died without warning. They could not restart the engine. While George tried to figure out the problem, the air around them filled with a sickening smell that seemed like a combination of ether and burnt sulfur. At first, George thought his car engine might be burning, but that was not the source. The smell agitated their baby, who began crying. As darkness settled in, George was in a quandary. Frametown, the nearest town, was about 12 miles away, too far away for a practical walk. Besides, he was reluctant to leave his wife and infant alone in the car. Suddenly, a blinding violet light shot out of the woods. George opened a window, and the interior of the car filled with a choking, nauseating mist. Despite the smell, he got out to investigate, retching violently. About 200 to 300 yards away was a luminescent spheroid that looked like a giant frosted street lamp. It floated in the air and moved back and forth. George walked closer, still sick. He began to feel hot and then felt a sensation like low-grade electric shock course through his body. Now frightened, he turned to hurry back to the car, but his legs turned rubbery and he fell repeatedly. Then he heard Edith scream. It was a blood-curdling scream, like a banshee. He lurched back to the car, where he saw a huge figure illuminated in the light from the spheroid. It was about 8 to 9 feet tall and shaped like a man, but with a reptilian head. It had shoulders, a weirdly bloated body, and a lower torso that seemed to be a solid mass of some sort. George scrambled into the car and pushed his wife and child onto the floor. He grabbed a knife out of the glove compartment. The creature moved closer until it was directly in front of the car. It reached out a spindly arm that ended in a soft, bisected fork of fingers and ran it across the windshield and hood as though it was examining the car. Then it turned and glided into the woods, disappearing from sight. Within a few minutes, a globe of light rose slowly above the trees and moved into the sky, suddenly shooting away in a trail of brilliant light. Badly shaken, George tried the ignition again, and this time the car started without a problem. They drove until they reached a truck stop diner, probably near Sutton, and went inside to compose themselves. They resolved not to talk about what happened. They then found a hotel and spent the night. The next morning, George found a forked discoloration on the hood of his car where the entity had touched it. The metal looked like it had been singed. And that, my friend, was just a couple of the reported encounters with the Flatwoods Monster. I have one more encounter I'd like to share with you, but before we get to that, how about we give our minds a rest, take a break, and enjoy this song.
Times when they hit you face down in the ground with the west side, flat seas, but the true never grow fat. Shouting, but they all got you on mute. When they got you thinking maybe it could be me, that's crazy. All the tears bled up, the climb up, dry up into nothing. Understand. Makes sense, but don't you know that nothing's really ever beautiful? We're all just broken windows. What you see depends from when you said your I could say my I, but on the floor
Welcome back, my friend. Shall we continue our journey into the realm of the unknown? I'd like to read the account from one witness, Audra Harper, as she shares her story in her own words, recorded on her typewriter. Her story takes place 3 miles outside of Flatwoods, prior to the published sightings of the September 12th incident. Her story begins. One night, Jay and I started to the store and were taking a near cut through a field. We looked up on a hill and saw a fire. I said, "I wonder who that is up there." And she said, "Probably Jess, fox chasing." We might have said a half a dozen words and glanced back up again, and this time it was a ball of fire. This time we couldn't take our eyes away. As quick can be, the ball of fire vanished and a tall black figure, 3 heights of a man, stood in the same place. We started running, crossed a barbed wire fence that I never even saw, and came to a gate. We opened it, and Jay started to close it. "It's right behind us," she said. I didn't think it was possible, for it would have had to run twice the distance we did. I turned around and fastened the gate before I looked up. There it stood. I can't remember anything, but just this huge black shape. We turned and ran through a field that in daylight you can hardly find a path between the rocks and boulders. Jay had the flashlight, and I didn't have any, but I never even stumped my toe. I think God must have been directing my feet. We made it to the store, half scared to death, knowing we still had to return the same way we came. We tried to borrow a gun, but everyone thought we were just imagining things. They didn't believe a word we said. We started back alone, but 2 neighbor boys had come down for a beer or 2, and they went back past this awful place with us. To have an experience like this and have no one believe us was terrible to bear. Then a woman and some children saw a huge form of a sort at Flatwoods, a few miles from us, and they even had her on television and wrote a big story about the Flatwoods Monster. I know we saw something just as bad. I'm 33 years old, and there is no insanity in our family. I think I'm at least average in smartness, but think me crazy if you will. I will never believe anything else. And that, my friend, concludes our final encounter of the night. After this event, investigators associated with civilian saucer investigation obtained a number of accounts from witnesses who claim to have experienced a similar or related phenomena. These accounts include the story of a mother and her 21-year-old daughter, who claim to have encountered the creature with the same appearance and odor a week prior to the September 12th incident. The encounter is said to have affected the daughter so badly that she was confined to Clarksburg Hospital for 3 weeks. They also gathered a statement from the mother of Eugene Lemon, in which she said that at the approximate time of the crash, her house had been violently shaken, and her radio had cut out for 45 minutes. Jean Lemon is said to have suffered from vomiting and convulsions throughout the night. A doctor who treated several of the witnesses is reported to have described their symptoms as being similar to victims of mustard gas, though such symptoms are also commonly found in sufferers of hysteria, which can be brought on by exposure to a traumatic or shocking event. There was also a report from the director of the local board of education in which he claimed to have seen a flying saucer taking off at 6:30 on the morning of September 13th. From what I've read, it appears that all sightings of the Flatwoods Monster are confined to the month of September in 1952. There may be others who have experienced this phenomena, but have not reported it. So as it stands, the only information we have to go off are these witness accounts. So tell me, what does the Flatwoods Monster sound like to you? Do you think the military really found no evidence of the crash site? And what is that strange mist they saw hanging in the air? I'd love to hear your theories, stories, or possible encounters you may have had. Please, leave them down below in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. As always, thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed today's episode, give it a thumbs up. And if it's not too much trouble, hit that subscribe button and ring the bell to be notified of upcoming shows. Remember to keep your eyes open. The world is a mysterious place, my friend. Until next time, I'm signing off.
The number you have dialed